Hello and welcome back to the next lecture. Today we're gonna see how to open your API to public with the OpenAPI. So the OpenAPI actually not only to public, maybe it's only for your client devices. For example, for if you have a backend for mobiles, you can use an OpenAPI or Swagger to generate let's say the helper methods for the mobile for both platforms in Swift and Java, for example, or Kotlin. And OpenAPI will be the best way to do it actually. So I opened our books resource that was previously in one of the first lectures. And we're gonna use an OpenAPI to add our API description of our book resource and actually some of the currency resource and grading resource as well. So that's actually super easy. We need to go to the terminal. So there are three ways to add an extension to your project. First one is actually when you create a project. Second one is just using a Maven. You just put a dependency inside. And third one is actually almost identical, except it's automatically this Quarkus automatically making it for you. It's just using this line of code, Maven, Quarkus, add extension, and then you specify the extensions. So when you run this, you will see that it's made some changes, added extension, IO Quarkus small I OpenAPI. So if you know the, let's import changes in the idea. If you know the correct Maven name, you can do it yourself without any help. So you can see that it just added another dependency, and that's basically it. There is no more changes in our project. So now, as I said in the previous lecture, when you have a Quarkus / something, that means it's mostly probably it's extension. So now, if we just run our app, Quarkus dev, let's see if it's even running. So it's compiling, downloading some of the data. And yeah, so now it's running perfectly. Let's go to the AT. So now we can go to the / open API, and it actually loads a file. In our case, it's OpenAPI 3.0.1 title generated API version, and then you can see paths. So we have a book path, right? Where we have a get with responses, possible responses 200. And then we have also a post with a response 200. And here we have a book ID put. So we have parameters as well here, name, ID, in path required true, schema format in 32, typed integer, and then we have an option to responses. So in our case in here, you can see that response is 200 and the content is application JSON and then schema component schemas book. So that's one of the other drawbacks when you put if you can remember, we had a forget, and for post we used the response, while for the put we had the book, we had the option. So in this case, I think I mentioned actually, because we have a response, Java can't Quarkus can't know if we won't use definitely like what the response should be in reality. So if we change it a little bit, let's put here books, actually collection of books, and here we just put just a return books. So now if we rerun our app, if we go again to open API, you can see that we have OpenAPI 2, and you can see that we on the get now we have a content application JSON and then a schema collection book. So collection book in our case, you can see that it's actually reference collection book, and then book is, so we have a properties author, pattern string, type string, nullable false, name, and pages as well in 32. And we also have a crypto endpoint and actually hello endpoint as well, which is, I think, for the, I don't know. So yeah, so we have a crypto endpoint, which we made in some of the previous lectures, and we have only get, right, and responses. In responses, we have collection of crypto, which is a collection of crypto object. Crypto is just price USD, symbol, and ID. So OpenAPI in general analyzes every endpoint that we have from the, like the, for example, get, and then path as well. And at the end, you have a pretty much real understanding of all the endpoints that you have, and then you just look at the returns, what it returns, if it's collection of the books, if it's response. In case of response, of course, you can't know for sure what you'll return, but if it's some POJO that you created, like a book in our case, you can see that we have name, author, and pages. Comparing to our text file, the book has author, name, and pages, as was described basically in this Java class, right? And yeah, so that's super. So if you don't like the name of the /OpenAPI, you can always change it from the application properties, providing Quarkus smaller I. It's not smaller I, but it's easy to say, OpenAPI, and then path. And let's name it, I know, Swagger. You know, there is a Swagger. And so we go to the Google Chrome, go to the Swagger, and you can see that we have a Swagger file with our endpoints. So that's good. So you can see that we actually have, from downloads, you can see that we have a info title generated API in version 1.0, which we haven't specified actually. And it's easy to change. The only thing that we actually need is to create a new class called application. We can name it, I don't know, let's just name it Quarkus application, because it's getting started, and then you just need to extend the application class, which is this one. And here you can specify the OpenAPI definition, and inside there is a lot of stuff. For example, we have an info, which is which we can specify an info class. And in info, you can have a title, description, and terms of service, contact, license, everything that you actually need. So this is, so with info, you can specify an info annotation. That's the first one, OpenAPI annotations info. And inside, you can see, you can put a title, for example, getting started API. And then, for example, description can be our test API description, right? Like this. And so it's also, and let's say version will be, I don't know, what should be 1.2, I don't know, just in case. So in this case, if we'll rerun our API, Swagger, you will see that we have info, title, getting started API, description, and version. And you can also put a lot of stuff here. For example, info is not only one that you can specify. For example, there is a servers, which is like the actual services that you can specify. For example, URL. If you have a development server, for example, dev now tech, like this. If we'll restart it again, Swagger, it should actually open in the browser. I'm not sure if it's not opening. So you can see there is a servers, and you can specify an URL, and the same thing goes basically for everything. Once you will use this OpenAPI definition, it will be straightforward how to add something new. For example, there is a tags. If you need to put some tags, here security requirements, external docs, and components as well. So yeah, you might also want to serve static YAML file, right? If you actually define your API before, or you just use the manual YAML to describe your API, it's sometimes it can be useful, even though you can basically automatically generate it with Swagger, but it's really helpful if you want to share something with your developer, like the other developer. For example, if you're a backend developer and you want to show the endpoint to mobile to verify if it's okay, then you can use a static file. So we can just put our, or let's take any of them. Okay, and let's rename it to Swagger, actually OpenAPI YAML file, like this, refactor. So now we have this thing, and let's name it some static API, like this. So one thing that you also need to put in the application properties is mp open API scan disable equals true. And now if we'll go to the Swagger, you will see that we actually served our some static API, right? So now scanning is disabled, and it will automatically use Swagger YAML or JSON if it's your case, or there is a way to put it in web info, and then the same thing, the same way. So yeah, so that's there. And one more thing that is actually included in Quarkus Swagger OpenAPI is that you can go to the Swagger UI and you will see the Swagger UI that can be sometimes helpful if you want to test something. For example, you could get a books, you can call it, try it out, and then execute, and you'll see the responses, like the some of the info and details. For example, you can see that everything that you need. So you can see that in this case it's somehow put a I think we actually misused our service, but yeah, so in our case it used also the 8080, but it's more fault of Swagger UI, but you get a point. So you can use if we'll remove actually from our OpenAPI the servers and restart our Swagger UI, got the books, try it out, execute, and you will see that we have the result, like the curl. You can see the curl, and you can use in the terminal, and you can see the response body as well, from the name, the freelancer's Bible, and then the author, I don't know, for example, right? And all the endpoints here as well. You can try out the crypto one. You can see the prices now. It actually can parse JSON for now, but I'm not sure why, but you got the idea. So you have also a Swagger UI. If you want to include a Swagger UI always, so it will be only enabled in dev. If you want to, for example, if you have an open API and you want to others API to use it, you can put the Quarkus Swagger UI always include equals true, like this. So now this way the Swagger UI will be always enabled even if it's in prod. Okay, you can also specify Swagger custom path, Quarkus Swagger UI path, and for example Swagger public, actually let's public API, like this. You need to restart your API as well, sadly, and let's wait a second for it to run, and then we can go to the public API in this case, and you will see that your Swagger is actually running on this endpoint. So now you know how to use a Swagger, and the most super nice thing about it is that you don't need to worry about the definition of your API if you're working from scratch, right? So for example, you can start working on the API, and once you're done, you don't need to press any button. You don't need to start writing your YAML file with describing all the endpoints. They are just already there. You just need to take this file, right, from the Swagger in our case, right, like this. You get the Swagger file, you put it as Swagger code gen, you generate two clients for Swift and for iOS and Java, for example, for JavaScript or for Python or whatever you need. And you have already everything prepared. So you just, if you have any changes, just change the API, show them, basically get the file, regenerate the clients, and you're ready to go with development of the API. And it's actually, it speeds up the process so greatly that you don't need to even you don't need to think about how to implement API, how to set up them, what libraries to use, for example, because for example in Swift you can use a Alamafire or something like this. Maybe you want to use a native endpoints or something. With this, you just get a pod, the Cocoa pod, and you just call methods that represent the API. For example, there will be some API object called API, and then you go the API.bookGet, for example, and the output will be an object generated by Swagger with the book, with all the fields that you have. So yeah, so I really highly recommend to use it in all of your projects. Even if you're thinking that from the start it only will be like, I'll just use it in front end, why do I need it? Even in front end it will be really helpful if you have a I don't know, some JavaScript framework. You can generate the JavaScript endpoints and use them without any issues with it, if you specify everything correctly, like this. So yeah, now you know how to generate a Swagger, how to use it, and even how to share it with the public. So I'll see you in the next lecture.